Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We are going to begin this Tuesday morning, of course, with the ongoing war in the Middle East. Iranians are celebrating their new supreme leader, Moshtaba Khamenei. He's the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was assassinated in an airstrike 10 days ago. But those celebrations come as Iran launches missiles and drones at their Gulf state neighbors and Israel, targeting critical infrastructure like power plants, hotels, airports, and data centers.
Back in the U.S. last night, Vice President J.D. Vance attended the dignified transfer for the 7th U.S. service member killed in the war with Iran. His name is Sergeant Benjamin N. Pennington. He was a member of the Army's 1st Space Battalion and 1st Space Brigade. He was from Glendale, Kentucky, and died on the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Here at home, anxiety looms over the surge in oil prices. The price of crude oil passed $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022 yesterday. Things then did settle back down after President Trump told reporters the war will be over very soon. But the Trump administration is also sending mixed messages. The president also agreed with Secretary Pete Hegseth that this is just the beginning.
We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further.
We have a team of correspondents and analysts joining us this morning to break down the latest from the ongoing war with Iran and its widening economic impact. Let's start with NBC's Matt Bradley in Israel. So, Matt, what is the latest from the ground where you are?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing here now is a somewhat stabilizing situation, but one that's still surrounded by war. We saw that there were actually 2 deaths yesterday here in Israel from Iranian ballistic missiles and projectiles. Those are the first deaths we've seen in more than a week. As we've heard from the IDF, that the number of missiles per Iranian salvo has really decreased. And people that I've been speaking to who are close to the security establishment here say that while we're still getting alerts all day long, all night long, we're not seeing the same kind of ferocity, the same number in each salvo as we were before. In many ways, that is part of the Iranian response. By firing smaller numbers of missiles, it makes it easier for those missiles to evade some of Israel's formidable air defenses. Now, the number of injuries has continued to remain about in the hundreds. Important to note here, guys, when we talk about injuries, the vast majority of people who have been injured in the past week here in Israel have been injured trying to run to those shelters by tripping and falling or having a panic attack or a heart attack in some cases. There have been motorway accidents that have hurt or even killed people because of these sirens. That's about 3 times the number of people who have been injured trying to get to those shelters than those who have been injured actually having to take in those missile launches and getting injured from shrapnel or other things.
Matt, Iranians have gathered to celebrate their new supreme leader over the past several days. Tell us, though, about the response from the U.S. and Israel to this choice, Moshtaba Khamenei, his appointment.
Yeah, we haven't heard much from Israel about this. This was something that was widely anticipated even long before October 7th and the attacks on Iran over the past couple of years. Moshtaba Khamenei was the heir apparent, even though his election really flies in the face of everything that the Islamic Republic really stands for ideologically. Their constitution expressly forbids inherited succession of power, simply as a result, as a reaction to the regime that this regime ousted, that of the Shah, where power was passed from father to son. Now, President Trump, not happy with this selection. He said, I'm not happy. He's also said that, that this is something that he was against. He had said earlier, kind of hinted that the big problem here, the worst case scenario would be if a bigger hardliner, if a more conservative justice took over leadership of Iran. Well, that is exactly what happened. Moshtaba Khamenei is close to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. He is very much against the reformers in the Iranian government who have made real entreaties to the West, in part by pledging to curb Iran's nuclear program. This is exactly the kind of person that experts had warned could take over in Iran.
Let's bring in Raf Sanchez, who is in London for more on the war's impact just across the Middle East. So we know as the U.S. and Israel continue to strike inside Iran, the Islamic Republic is now targeting critical infrastructure in Israel, also its Gulf Arab neighbors. We're talking about important civilian locations, hotels, airports, power plants, data centers. Raf, what's been the impact of these strikes?
So, Joe, the most obvious impact is just this worldwide travel chaos that you're seeing. Hundreds of flights canceled, thousands and thousands of passengers, including Americans, stranded, unable to get where they're trying to go. Dubai is the busiest international airport in the world. Its flight schedule has been very badly impacted by this. And what you've seen is that Iran has basically been able to bring a level of chaos to its Gulf Arab neighbors that they are not used to. Countries like the UAE, like Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they're in the Middle East, but they've been largely insulated from a lot of the violence, a lot of the unrest in recent years. And now they are feeling it very, very distinctly. And this seems to be a deliberate Iranian strategy. Whether it is an effective strategy, the jury is still out, I would say. The Iranians basically putting these Gulf countries under a lot of military pressure in the hope that they will in then turn put pressure on Washington to end this war. Iran's explanation is that these countries host American military bases, which is true, but most of those military bases were emptied out before the start of this war. And we are seeing Iran targeting civilian infrastructure, including hotels, apartment buildings. And guys, the thing that these countries have really struggled with are these relatively small, low-cost Iranian drones, which seem to be getting through their air defenses in medium, large numbers. Guys.
Raf, I also want to talk about oil and the Strait of Hormuz. A spokesperson for Iran's Revolutionary Guard said Iran will block that export of crude oil from the region if the U.S. and Israel continue their attacks. Trump has warned Iran not to block shipping through this area, through the Strait of Hormuz, which is essentially shut down right now. How is this standoff on oil changing the dynamics of the war?
Right, Savannah. So we saw oil prices yesterday spiking to nearly $120 a barrel. They came back down. They're now a little bit below 90. And that is in response to President Trump indicating that the war may be close to concluding. But as you mentioned in the introduction, he then went on to send pretty mixed signals in that press conference down in Florida. And so there's no reason that those oil prices won't go back up again if the markets begin to believe that this chaos that they're seeing right now in the Strait of Hormuz is going to continue for some time. And this seems to be the absolute core of Iran's strategy going forward. They know that they cannot defeat the United States and Israel militarily. They're not going to be able to fend off the warplanes from these two countries. What they are able to do is effectively close the Straits of Hormuz, drive up oil prices everywhere, inflict economic pain on everyone, and they hope that at a certain point, President Trump will feel the pressure to call this war off in response to Americans paying more at the gas pump, to potentially inflation across the board as a result of these higher oil prices. And what's been notable, the U.S. has had a lot of success in destroying the Iranian Navy, but the Iranians do not need their Navy to effectively close the Straits of Hormuz. Just the geography, the fact that their land forces can threaten the Straits seems to be enough to deter shipping. Guys.
Right. Raf Sanchez, Matt Bradley, thank you both for kicking us off this hour. We appreciate it.
Well, let's get more on that we were just discussing, because uncertainty over the war in the Middle East is continuing to rattle financial markets. Oil prices went on a roller coaster ride yesterday, initially topping $100 a barrel before ending the day below that mark.
It was a similar story for U.S. stocks, which opened firmly in the red before closing higher. The turnaround came after President Trump suggested the war could be ending soon, adding that he was focused on keeping energy and oil flowing in the world. Here's a little bit more about what he said yesterday.
We're looking to keep the oil prices down. We went artificially up because of this excursion. I knew oil prices would go up if I did this, and they've gone up probably less than I thought they'd go up.
Caleb Silver joins us now. He's Investopedia's editor-in-chief and the chief business editor of People Inc. Caleb, good morning. So another bumpy day for Wall Street yesterday. Help us understand all these moves we saw in both the stock and oil markets, and how's it shaping up today?
Yeah, because it's all about headline risk, and the stock market is moving with these headlines or whatever the president says or doesn't say, and so do oil prices. But the important thing to know is that oil prices are always trading in the future. We're always trading in the future price of oil, what the price of oil might be next month or the month after, and it trades 23 hours a day, which is why you see so much volatility. It went up to $120 a barrel yesterday morning, down now to about $90 a barrel. It's not as if physical oil is being moved. It's just the contracts for future oil are being moved, but it does have an impact on gas prices. For every dollar move in oil prices, you get about a 2 to 3 cent move in the price of gasoline. And we're starting to see that gas is up some 30% higher than it was just a month ago. But this is a stock market and an oil market that is reacting to these headlines. And without clear policy or a clear direction where this is going, you're going to see a lot of that volatility until this ends.
Caleb, you talk about headlines. There was one made yesterday where President Trump spoke with NBC News and he refused to rule out seizing Iran's oil. In response, we know the Iranian Revolutionary Guard says it would not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the Middle East. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But besides that, we know this is impacting gas prices. I think the question a lot of people have right now is how high could those prices get?
Yeah, we'll take it back to 2008 and 2009. Oil prices spiked up to about $130 a barrel, and gas prices spiked up to about $4 or $5 a gallon. I'm down here in South Florida. Gas prices are already about $4.50, the national average being about $3.50. But remember, it was $2.90 just a month ago. So it's about a 2-week lag between oil prices rising and gas prices rising along with them, although you see retailers start to move those prices a little bit more aggressively. The thing about oil and gas prices, they go up pretty fast, but it takes them a long time to come down because those prices get locked in, and then companies, big companies or airlines, lock in their oil prices going forward. We already heard from United Airlines saying these higher oil prices are going to mean higher ticket fares eventually if they remain high.
Caleb, we've been talking about these growing concerns about stagflation for the global economy. Remind us what exactly that means. What are the risks? Because this is kind of a worst case scenario.
Yeah, stagflation, not a bad Tom Hanks movie from the 1980s. That is where you have higher inflation, rising prices, slower growth, and slowing employment. And we saw from that jobs report that we covered last week for the month of February, the United States lost 92,000 jobs, and prices are rising, and oil prices have a way of making everything more expensive because they're critical to the supply chain. But also, there's a lot of derivative products from oil. There's the plastics that come from oil. There's fertilizer that comes from oil, and then oil to be used for transport. If you look at the oil prices, the one that's been hitting the most, and the gas prices, it's diesel. That's because a lot of that comes through the oil that's refined in the Middle East. So you're seeing farmers hurt by that. You're seeing truckers hurt by that, and the airlines hurt by that. They use diesel the most.
So with that in mind, if you're the Federal Reserve and the goal is to try and stop inflation, but also to kind of get the economy revving a little bit, are they kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place? When they meet next week, what do they do?
Yeah, well, they're stuck in a hard place because the labor market is one thing that they're super concerned about, and that has been slowing undeniably. That said, if they lower interest rates right now, that could cause even more inflation at a time where these oil prices are going to cause inflation. So they probably won't do anything because the data is not that secure yet, and they don't know the direction that this war is going to take because the president seems to keep changing his mind a lot.
All right. Caleb Silver, good to have you with us. Let's pick it up from there. We've been talking about these mixed messages from President Trump. They are leading to these swirling questions around the timeline for the U.S. military's campaign against Iran. The president spoke on a variety of topics at a House Republicans' annual policy retreat in Florida yesterday. During his 50-minute speech, President Trump called the war a, quote, short-term excursion, but he later went on to offer new threats against Iran with a warning of intensifying strikes. Let's bring in NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor. Sahil, let's start with these mixed messages we've been talking about all morning. The president spoke extensively on the war in that event with House Republicans and campaign donors. Walk us through what appear to be these inconsistent statements when it comes to just how long the war might last.
Yes, certainly mixed messages and inconsistent statements, guys. The president did not put a timeline on this war in terms of when it will end. And those watching the speech for clues will probably come away more confused after watching it. So let's go through some of it. The president called it a little excursion and a short-term excursion that the U.S. is getting very close to finishing. These are all his words. He said we could call it a tremendous success right now, or we could go further. And we're going to go further, he said, especially if Iran acts to curtail ships in the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you just talked about, is important to oil flow in the midst of fears of rising gas prices. Take a look at what the president posted on Truth Social after the speech regarding Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far, end quote. And he was asked about how this could end soon, while Defense Secretary Hegseth said the attacks so far are only just the beginning. And President Trump said, I think you could say both. It's unclear how you could square those two things. So, of course, we see more questions than answers here. And look, we have to see all of this hesitation in the midst of the political context here. There are serious economic concerns already, even before gas prices were rising. This was seen by Trump officials as one of the positives for him politically. And there's also the fact that early polls show that the country is not sold on this war. So you can imagine why the president is trying to downplay how long it might go.
Sahil, the president's also facing backlash for comments he made at another appearance yesterday. He continues to make the unfounded claim that Iran is responsible for the bombing of a school that left more than 170 people dead on the first day of the war, including children. We should note, experts say the U.S. is the only military involved in the war that uses Tomahawk missiles. So, Sahil, tell us what the president said and how there is this growing evidence that seems to contradict what he's saying.
Yeah, the main evidence is this video, as you mentioned, that's come out that experts say shows a U.S. Tomahawk missile striking the area. NBC News has reported that early U.S. assessments do indicate this was a U.S. missile that struck the girls' school and killed more than 160 people. The president claimed without evidence that this might actually be Iran, a claim that the U.S. military is not backing up. And the president was asked bluntly yesterday why he is the only one in his government making this claim. Let's play what he said.
Well, I haven't seen it, and I will say that the Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries, you know that. And whether it's Iran, who also has some Tomahawks, I wish they had more, but whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a Tomahawk is very generic, it's sold to other countries, but that's being investigated right now.
And U.S. senators, including allies of President Trump, are not denying it was the U.S. Take a listen to what Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana said about that yesterday when I asked him.
It was terrible. We made a mistake. Other countries do that sort of thing intentionally, like Russia. We would never do that intentionally. I think the department is investigating it now, and I'm sorry. I'm just so sorry it happened. It was a mistake.
And other senators say they want a full investigation into how this could have happened. Joe.
Sahil, also this morning, we are expecting the Senate Armed Services Committee to hold a closed-door briefing on what's happening in Iran. What are some of the answers they're looking for?
So the details of this closed-door briefing are a little bit opaque, Joe. We asked some senators on the committee as to who's briefing them. They didn't even have an answer to that. But look, they have a lot of questions, which senators have been pretty public about regarding the war. They want to know what's the plan, what's the strategy, how long this will go. Again, even senators are not particularly clued in terms of what the end game is here. Is the president going to ask for more money? That's a question that's very pertinent to Congress. There are Democrats who are certainly going to ask about the legality of this going forward, the legal authority, which they don't believe the president had to begin with. So quite a lot of questions still for the administration to answer to the U.S. Congress.
All right, Sahil, thank you so much. Switching gears, the spring break travel season is now underway, but it might take travelers a little longer to get where they're going. Experts are warning people to be prepared for massive disruptions. Take a look at this. Security lines at some major airports are so long they're actually snaking out onto the curb, even into the parking garage. The primary reason, a partial government shutdown that's forcing some TSA officers to work without pay. Well, now some of them just aren't showing up. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello explains.
The start of a record-breaking spring break season, and again, long lines at some big airports. In Atlanta, the world's busiest. In Philly, time-lapse captured the long lines. In New Orleans, a packed terminal with lines extending to the parking garage. And hours-long lines yet again in Houston.
TSA line starts downstairs in baggage.
I've been waiting in line for about 2 hours now. When we were outside, way far away from the door, that was a little frightening. We're still hopeful because we're moving at this point.
NBC's Priscilla Thompson is there.
This is the scene at Hobby Airport in Houston. Security lines stretch across the entire top floor through baggage claim and snaking out onto the curb.
The reason for the long lines, the DHS shutdown over ICE policies. Caught in the middle, TSA officers and passengers.
They're just political footballs, basically, that are used as leverage points for political battles that they have nothing to do with.
After receiving half a paycheck 2 weeks ago, TSA officers will miss a full check this week, with most working paycheck to paycheck, and now some taking part-time work.
They have their fuel tanks and they need to fill up their stomachs. They have little kids that need to go to daycare.
Last fall, TSA officers went 3 weeks without getting paid, then waited another month for their back pay. And now, yet again, working without pay. Back to you.
Tom Costello, thank you. We are learning more about the 2 teens accused of an attempted bombing outside the mayor's residence here in New York. Investigators say both suspects pledged allegiance to ISIS while in custody after they were arrested over the weekend. Now they're both facing federal terrorism and weapons charges. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has the latest.
Just 1 hour before 2 devices were ignited but not detonated at a protest outside of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's residence, authorities say that 2 suspects arrived from Pennsylvania to New York armed with explosives and inspired by ISIS. They are now facing 5 counts of terrorism charges as we're learning disturbing new details about what they told police. A chilling terror attack thwarted in the backyard of New York City's mayor. Chaos unfolding as demonstrators clashed and ran for safety.
This was not random violence. This was a planned attack motivated by extremist ideology.
The FBI says these 2 teenage suspects in counter-protesters stand accused of igniting 2 improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, and trying to detonate them in a crowd of anti-Islam demonstrators and counter-protesters outside the mayor's residence. One suspect is seen here, leapfrogging a man and hurling an object, which failed to detonate.
Had these IEDs functioned the way the perpetrators allegedly wanted them to, they could have caused death, destruction.
The NYPD says the nuts, bolts, and shrapnel were packed into the devices, at least one of which contained a highly explosive material that is extremely sensitive to impact, friction, and heat.
Both men were immediately taken into custody, and the devices they brought taken off of our streets.
19-year-old Ibrahim Kuyami and 18-year-old Amir Balat appearing in court this morning. Just prior, Balat holding up his finger in a gesture often used to show ISIS support. As the FBI and NYPD said both suspects repeatedly referenced the terror group after their arrest.
He requested paper and wrote a message declaring in part, "I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State. Die in your rage."
The Pennsylvania pair facing 5 counts, including supporting a foreign terrorist organization. Balat's attorney telling NBC News he's 18 and he doesn't have any idea what he's doing, as attorneys for both men requested protective custody. The NYPD says it has no information at this time that would connect the investigation going on here in New York to what's happening overseas in Iran. Now, in the complaint, one of the suspects told the FBI that he wanted to do something that was, quote, bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing, where he said only 3 people died in that. Sam Brock, NBC News, New York. Back to you.
Could be a big weather day, so let's get right to your forecast. This morning, tens of millions of people are at risk for severe storms. Angie Lastman is here with that. Good morning, News Now weather. Angie, good morning.
Hi, Joe. Good morning. You said it. We've got the chance for some of those stronger storms to develop, and it's for a good chunk of the country. So let's start with what we're dealing with this morning. Fairly quiet for a lot of us. We've got quiet conditions across the Northeast, most of the Great Lakes, a little bit of snow falling for the upper Midwest, and then you'll see some of this, shower activity developing across parts of the South right now. And here's how it plays out as we get through the day today and even into tonight. We'll see the potential for a whole lot of storm activity across parts of the southern plains and stretching even up into parts of the Midwest, specifically the Ohio Valley. When you look at that severe risk, you can see there is an enhanced risk across a chunk of the country, up across parts of the Midwest, just on that border of Chicago, just north of St. Louis, I think is where we'll see the best chance of that. And then farther south, there's an enhanced risk that does include Dallas, starting stretching down to Sonora and down to the border, but really expansive. And the potential for those threats are going to be elevated. We've got the chance to see a couple of these strong tornadoes as well, hail and wind gusts on the table. But notice those EF2 tornadoes could potentially be anywhere across this region. So where you see this kind of lighter pinkish red shade, that's where we're looking at those stronger tornadoes to develop. And again, major cities, Cleveland, Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Dallas, Oklahoma City, all included in that. That's just today and into tonight. Tomorrow, that front will extend from New York all the way to Texas, and we'll see, again, the chance of some really heavy rain and some stronger storms. Not quite as big of a risk for tomorrow when it comes to severe weather, but still, we've got the chance to see some strong tornadoes, some wind gusts, and some hail, and not to mention the potential for some flooding. That goes through tomorrow. And then as we look ahead to Thursday, we're going to start to see that kind of slide off to the east as far as that front is concerned, but still some of those storms developing up across parts of New England, and will unfortunately be looking at some rain mixed with some wet snow. Yes, I know everybody is done with the wintry weather, but unfortunately we've still got some potential for that down the road in the next couple of days. Rainfall, though, I want you to watch places like Texas, Arkansas, where we could see those higher amounts, so upwards of maybe 2-3 inches. And that means that we do have that flood risk anywhere from really Dallas to Del Rio today. And then including the parts of the upper Midwest and the Ohio Valley, we're once again going to watch for that slight risk for flash flooding. So we've got kind of all of it on the table today, Joe. And over the next couple of days, with this chapter of the season developing, we'll likely see the potential lasting at least the next couple of days.
It's to have like the 70-degree days and then there's snow. It's like when you go in like the hot tub and then you like jump in the cold pool.
Yeah, it's
kind of like
a
that.
Jolt.
Exactly, it's a
jolt to the system.
I like that word. All right, thanks, Angie. Appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.